when you first look at the World of Greyhawk, the impression is that the kingdoms have been there forever and everything's thousands of years old, and you're looking on a very ancient civilization, but that's just not the case. And I want to talk about it today on Greyhawk Grognard. So when you first look at the World of Greyhawk, especially something like the gold box, that's intended to be a general overview of the setting, you get the impression that the kingdoms and everything that you're looking at are really ancient, that they've been there for many, many centuries, thousands of years sometimes, and there's this huge tableau of history that has preceded the campaign, and and you're just coming in at the end of the of a very ancient story, and it's just not the case. And what I'm looking at specifically here is the timeline of the World of Greyhawk as found in the original gold box, same one that we had uh, in the folio, more or less. And I think part of the impression that you get is by the dating conventions, right? Because you've got several different types of years that are counted, right? The common year. So that's when we say the Greyhawk starts in 576. That's 576 common year. And that's just one of many things. But you have something here like the Suloi's dating calendar. And and that year is 6091. The Elven calendar, is 5038. The Bakluni, 3,235. The Flanaess, 2,726. And even the Iridian calendar, 1,220. So you get these really high numbers, and it makes you think that, oh, we must be talking about things in the Flanaess that have been there forever, for thousands and thousands of years. It's just not true. And part of that is because there's so much history that we don't know about before the twin cataclysms, before the invoked devastation, before the rain of colorless fire. There was, that's where the thousands of years of history is. But when we talk about the Flanaess specifically, and the Flanaess is this area back here, it's the map behind me. It's the famous Darlene map. It's what everybody thinks of as Greyhawk. It's actually just a small continent on a much larger world. But when you look at the numbers, it's very, very young, the what we see in the Flanaess. And let me just give you the best example. When you think of the twin cataclysms, when you think of the invoked devastation and the rain of colorless fire, the singular event that really kicked off the history of the Flanaess as we know it, it only happened around 1,000 years ago. And when I say, and I'm assuming 576. When I say ago, I mean before 576. So around 1,000 years ago, a just a couple years less of short of 1,000. That's when the invoked devastation happens. That's when the rain of colorless fire happens. That's when all the migrations really kick off, and that's when all of the things that were go away, and the things that are, from our perspective now, are not even there yet. So in that space of 1,000 years, all of the kingdoms that you see behind me, all of the nomads and everything, they all got set up. They all became created in just 1,000 years. And I think that's extraordinary, and it really is going to color the way you look at the setting. And I think that's part of Gygax's genius, is that it seems like everything should feel a lot more ancient than it actually is in the setting. And I want to give a couple more examples and go through this and just show you're really talking about things that have happened in relative recent history in the setting.
A ghoul leaps out and attacks you. What do?
I attack it with my sword. Come out, thee creature!
Explore the role-playing game where fantasy comes to life with magic, monsters, and endless options. Adventures Dark and Deep. Available now at adventuresdarkanddeep.com.
So let's take another example here, and that is the Great Kingdom, right? The Great Kingdom is an enormously influential source in the Flanaess over its history, and it is it basically goes from the city of Greyhawk, uh, right behind me, all the way to the edge of the map on the thing. They ruled half the continent at one point, and it was the Great Kingdom was founded only 200 years after the Invoked Devastation. That is when the kingdom of Erde was first founded. That means all of those migrations across the continent happened, and then they founded a kingdom. And then only a 100 year what is it? Only 200 years later, the Great Kingdom has now conquered back half that continent. So in the course of 200 years, all the migrations happen. They cross the entire continent, the Iridians. They found the Kingdom of Erde, and then 200 years after that, they have conquered all of that territory they just crossed, all the way from the Erde Sea, all the way from the Solnor Ocean, all the way over to the city of Greyhawk, and then they keep going. They keep going into what is now Furiandi and so forth. They literally rule the entire continent, but they do it in the course of 400 years. And that is extraordinary. You'd think, oh, it's going to take them thousands of years to do that. No, and this is the thing. The Iridians, they are a dynamic culture. They are full of energy. They're full of drive. They're full of confidence, and they do all these things in such a short amount of time. It's amazing to watch. But the beauty of it is there is absolutely a historical precedent for this. Because let's say I'm fond of using the fall of Rome as the jumping off point for European history, in the same way that the invoked devastation is the jumping off point for the history of the Flanaess. So if you take that and then you move it forward 200 years, we have the founding of the Carolingian Empire by Charlemagne. So in that same amount of time, the distances are a little less in Europe because the Flanaess is huge, as Anna Meyer has pointed out. But the idea is the same: is that only 200 years after an enormous shock to the civilized world, then you have new civilization has arisen and is starting to consolidate and everything in only 200 years. And I think that's really cool. And I think Gygax did that on purpose. He knew his history. He knew that it was possible for civilizations to fall and then rise again so quickly afterwards. And I think that was a deliberate choice on his part. And we have other things that are a little more, even more recent. So we have the kingdoms of Selene, which is the Elvish kingdom, again right behind me. So it's kind of a pain, but Saline right here, and then the Ulic states down here, which had broken away from the kingdom of Kaoland when Kaoland became a kind of an imperial power for a few years, and they didn't like it, so they broke away. All that happened only 100 years ago. No, let's see. Yeah, only around 100 years ago. Selene, the kingdom of the elves, has only been around for a little over 100 years. That I know it's shocking when you think of it in those terms. Um, Another big thing that happened, obviously over the years, the Great Kingdom had contracted, right? All of its outer provinces started breaking away, and then it became smaller and smaller and smaller. And that process obviously took a few centuries. But something that was much more recent in recent history, in terms of the Flanaess, was the fall of the Bone March, and that is up here. This is the Bone March was taken by a great humanoid army coming out of the mountains, and that was obviously a very traumatic thing. It took out a big chunk out of North Province and so forth. But the Bone March only happened 13 years ago in the setting. I know it feels like it happened such a long time ago, but it was a very recent event in terms of the history of the Flanaess, and it should be treated that way. It doesn't have to be in terms of the psychology. They wouldn't think of it in terms of, oh, this happened so long ago, we might as well accept it as being permanent. No, the Great Kingdom is actively trying to reverse that, because from their point of view, strategically, it just happened. And medieval history is like that. You see all that stuff. So to take it in the broader term of European history, between the fall of Rome, between the invoked devastation and the reign of colorless fire, and today, when we have all these kingdoms and all this history has happened, only takes 1,000 years. If you take that from the fall of Rome, from 476 AD, and you take that ahead 1,000 years to, say, the year 1500, imagine how much history happened in Europe between the year 500 and 1500. You have kingdoms coming and going, empires are built and they fall, all in the course of that same amount of time. And when you put it in that perspective, then the fact that the twin cataclysms only happened 1,000 years ago doesn't sound so absurd, because you realize, oh yeah, all that, it is very possible for a civilization to undergo all that history in that short amount of time, because Europe did the same thing, and they went from, there were invasions by the Moors, and Spain was conquered and then reconquered, and just all kinds of stuff happened. The Vikings happened, and England became a single realm, and France was conquered and almost completely conquered by England, and the kingdom of Burgundy came and then went. And all this stuff happened. The Turks were at the gates of Vienna, and all this stuff happens in just about 1,000 years, and it is amazing that the history of the Flanaess happens in that same way, and that things that we think of as being really ancient things are really relatively recent. For example, another one, the Ernst and the county of Ernst and the duchy of Ernst. These guys here, they only became independent from the Great Kingdom um, 75 years ago. Yeah, I know, they're only 75 years old. Greyhawk became a free city 78 years ago in the timeline. They've only been a free city for 78 years in the time of the campaign. Think of that. Just imagine what that means. That it was under, it was under the Great Kingdom for all that time, and then only 75 years ago did it become a free city. It when you think of the history in those terms, nothing it makes it a lot less settled, a lot more dynamic, a lot more, hey, anything can happen here, because look what just happened 100 years ago, and compare that to today. There's all kinds of really cool stuff going on. And I think if you look at the history of the Flanaess in that light, I think it really changes the perception. It becomes much less this ancient staid thing that's been around forever. It's dynamic. It is in turmoil. It is constantly moving. Only a few years ago, enormously major things happened. Kingdoms that we you look at the map and you think, oh, that's been there forever. No, it only became independent 75 years ago. What? That's just crazy. But it really changes the perception of the setting. And when you're doing your campaign, think of it in those terms, and then you'll feel a little more free to make some radical changes in a very short amount of time. So anyway, hope you like this one. Let me know what you think in the comments. I would love to hear your thoughts on the history and how long it takes things to happen in the Flanaess, especially. But if you want to compare it to other things, that would be awesome too. Hope you're having a wonderful, wonderful day, and I will talk to you all later.
Thanks for watching today's video. Please remember to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Below you'll find links to my Patreon, which helps make these videos possible. You'll also find the web store where you can buy my books, and my blog where you'll find all sorts of free downloads and other articles. Thanks, and have a great day.